Hey guys, Serac here, and today I'm bringing you my Tri-brigade Lyrilusc, or sometimes known as Bird Up deck profile. This is one of the current top decks in today's meta game, so it's a little bit more expensive, but it's pretty close to the complete optimal non-budget build, so I hope that makes up for the slightly increased cost. It's still relatively cheap at around under £200. So let's get into the profile. We have 3 copies of Tri-brigade Fractal. Now, all the Tri-brigades deal with Beast, Beast Warrior, Winged Beast monsters, and they all have an effect that says you can banish any number of the Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monsters from your graveyard to special summon a Link monster with the same Link rating from your extra deck. So this is really good because it lets you dodge Link summoning requirements, so cards like the Ancient Warriors Link 2, which normally needs an Ancient Warriors monster, a Wind Ancient Warriors monster, can be just Link summoned normally in this deck using the graveyard effect, and it also means you don't minus yourself for making Link plays. However, the Links will then be unable to be special summoned back with a card like Monster Reborn because they've not been properly Link summoned. Anyway, Fractal's other effect, so they all have another effect, usually revolving around sending cards to the graveyard, is you can send it from the hand or field to the graveyard, send one level 3 or lower of the 3 relevant monster types in this deck from your deck to your graveyard. So this is how you start your Tri-brigade plays a lot of the time. Discarding this card, sending the Tri-brigade cards from your deck to graveyard, sets up your graveyard and allows you to add the other pieces to your hand. We have 3 copies of Tri-brigade Keras. Keras is the card that we're sort of eventually adding to our hands and summoning to then enable us to Link summon from our graveyard. So Keras is really, really useful for that. It's a free special summon by discarding another card of the relevant types. We don't usually mind discarding cards because it gives us more access to our other Tri-brigade effects that we maybe haven't gone through yet in our turn. It's a body on the field for the Link summoning effect, and it's a beast for a card like Rescue Cat. We have 2 copies of Tri-brigade Kit. Kit is a new card from Blazing Vortex. Kit is really, really good for us because it's another way of dumping cards from the deck to the graveyard by sending it off Fractal, discarding it with Keras, anything like that. It has the usual Tri-brigade effect, but also relevant is it can send a Tri-brigade card, not monster, card. So you can send the spell or the trap that we're running for their graveyard effects if you need them. It's also a beast, so it's also a Rescue Cat target. We have 3 copies of Tri-brigade Nerval. Nerval is our searcher of the deck. It's a level 1 winged beast, which means it basically is an honorary Lyralusk. So that really, really helps us, and when it's sent to the graveyard, it lets us search for any Tri-brigade monster. So that's the Tri-brigade component of the deck. We now have the Lyralusk component. We have 3 Turquoise Warbler. If you control no monsters, special summon this card from your hand. If it's special summoned, special summon 1 Lyralusk monster from your hand or graveyard. Very simple. Immediate Starling Xyz monster or Link 2 play. Very, very simple. Very, very useful for the deck. We then have 3 Lyralusk Sapphire Swallow. If you control a Winged Beast monster, you can special summon this card and 1 level 1 Winged Beast monster from your hand. You can only use this once per turn. And then if this card was summoned, is used to make a Wind Xyz monster, you can target a Lyralusk monster in your graveyard and attach it to this card as material. That's less relevant, but does occasionally come up. Because it can only target Lyralusks. It's not like it can target level 1 Winged Beast, so it can't target Nerval. And then finally, for Lyralusks, we have 3 Lyralusk Cobalt Sparrow. If it's special summoned, you get to search a level 1 Winged Beast, so this card searches Nerval. It also searches DD Crow if we need it. And it also protects, again, your winged beast monsters from card effects targeting. Less relevant because we're not playing the Zeus package, so our opponent being able to interact, we're not playing the Nightingale Elixirs, so the interacting with it is less relevant for us. We then get onto 2 copies of Rescue Cat. This is Prime Ash Bait. It allows you to just go into some absolutely insane combos. It's one of those cards that you activate, your opponent ashes it, and then you have the Gamma, and now your opponent's just given you a free Omega. It searches Kit, it searches Keras, so it's an immediate link to plus the Kit graveyard effect. It's really, really strong card. So we then have our Power Oneoffs. In our monster lineup, these are our Simorg targets. We have 1 Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds, and we have 1 Mist Valley Apex Avian. Both of these are just cards we're making off the Simorg link. Usually we'll make the Barrier Statue on turn 1 as a floodgate, and then the Avian is made on turn 2, because we get to summon every turn. We then get onto our hand traps. We have 3 copies of DD Crow. You could cut this down if you wanted to play to fit in different hand traps. It's searchable, it's a relevant card type, it's a level 1 winged beast, and it's got a nice effect, and it puts itself in the graveyard, which is very, very useful for your Tri-brigade effects. We then have our nice, well-known, simple Gamma package. This is really, really strong in this deck because a lot of our effects don't need monsters on the field to activate, such as our Tri-brigade effect. If we're just using cards like Foolish Burial, like Fractal, like Rescue Cat, they are all cards that are really, really good at baiting Ash Blossoms, and then we drop the Gamma on them, we make an Omega, and now they look very, very silly. So it's really, really good, and also helps going second, obviously. We then have 3 copies of Fire Formation Tanky. This searches your Fractal. Enough said about it. Again, baits Ash Blossoms. Searches Fractal. It's essentially copies number 4, 5, and 6 of your Fractal. We then get into our one-off spells. We have 1 Tri-brigade Rendezvous. This is mainly used for its graveyard effect. It allows you to protect any of your Tri-typed linked monsters. So banish it from the graveyard, stops the monster being destroyed by battle. Generally you use this to protect cards like your Barrier Statue, because one of the ways to out a Barrier Statue is attack over it, because it's only got 1,000 attack. Then have 1 Called by the Grave. This card really, really does not like being... This deck does not like being hand-trapped. You have to run it. So it's just a really, really useful card to stop your opponent from interrupting your plays. 1 Monster Reborn. Generic extension is nice, generally. You can bring back cards like an outed Barrier Statue with this. You can bring back an Apex Avian that's been got rid of. You can bring back a link that was properly link summoned, and so on. Or just bring back a card like Fractal, immediately send it to the graveyard, and get the loops going again. 1 Foolish Burial. Most of your Tri-brigades have graveyard effects. This is a free way to get them going. Again, filling your graveyard is very, very useful for making your larger links. 1 copy of 1 for 1. Again, the discard is almost a benefit for us because we can discard cards like Nerval to get searches, or Kit to dump cards to the graveyard, and then we get to special summon whether we need a Lyralusk or a Tri-brigade Nerval, and we get whichever one we need. And then finally we have one trap, and it's a copy of Tri-brigade Oath. This is pretty good if you draw it. It allows you to just bring back any beast warrior, or a winged beast from a different type. And because we can set up all three types very easily, it doesn't really matter from our hand or graveyard. So if we draw a barrier statue that we don't want to, that we can't get out of our hand for whatever reason, this allows us to play it on our opponent's turn. It also really helps with cards like Apex Avian, or just bringing back again any card to start our plays again. But more often effect we're using is the graveyard effect. We can, as I said, we can very easily set up cards of all three types in the deck, and then we can banish it and negate a spell or trap our opponent controls. So this card can stop droplets if they don't discard a trap card. It can stop Dark Ruler no more. It can stop Lightning Storm. It's really useful. So that's the main deck, and now we will get into the extra deck. We have two copies of Tri-brigade Shereg, the Ominous Omen. Unfortunately, you do really need to run two of these because you're quite often linking the first one off into something else. But it's non-targeting banishing removal that is fairly easy to activate on your opponent's turn with cards like Rugal. And then it's a search when it's sent to the graveyard, and that includes being linked off, which is why quite often you're linking it off. So running two is much better than running one if you can afford it. We then have one Tri-brigade Rugal, the Silversheller. This is relevant because it's a beast warrior, and we don't run that many beast warriors in the deck. Fractal's the only one in the main deck, and then there's this plus the Ancient Warrior link in the extra deck. So this is our way of triggering Shereg's effect in our opponent's turn. It lets us special summon any beast warrior from our hand, any of the tri-types from our hand or graveyard without its effect, and then bounce it during the end phase. Mainly used for triggering Shereg's effect. And then if it goes to the graveyard, all monsters your opponent controls lose 300 attack for each monster type you control, which is less relevant but does sometimes come up in pushing for OTKs and just making sure getting damage on in, say, time or what have you. We then have two copies of Tri-brigade Ferrosheet. This, you could run one copy if you wanted, but two is generally better. This is an extender, special summoning anything from your hand that you want. Again, locks you into those link monsters, but those link materials, but you don't mind because you're not using anything else as link material anyway. And then if it goes to the graveyard, you get to cycle a card out of your hand. So draw one, place one card on the bottom of your deck, which just, again, helps you sculpt your hand to what you need, get rid of cards that you don't want in your hand. Maybe you want the Oath specifically in the graveyard, not in your hand. You can put cards like the Barrier Statue back in your deck, and so on. So now we get into the generic links. We have one link Karibo. This card's really helpful for protecting cards like Barrier Statue. It's a easy way if you have some sort of cloggy hands that don't contain the right components for going into normal plays. It allows you to do stuff just like normal summoning a Nerval, linking it off into link Karibo, and getting a Fractal and going from there. One copy of Mirage, which is basically doing the same thing as Link Karibo. This would be one of the cards you could cut, this or the Link Karibo, if you wanted to put a Zeus package into the deck. We have one Harpy Conductor. This is mainly in the deck as it's two downward pointing arrows, so which we do need because we link summon a lot, so we need good arrows. Other than that, it's just a relatively generic Link 2 that we can make from our graveyard. We have one Ancient Warrior's Oath, Double Dragon Lords. This, again, we dodge the summoning requirement by making it out of our graveyard. And this, again, it's 2 downward pointing arrows, which is very, very useful. And it has a really, really useful quick effect to send a card from our hand or field to the graveyard, which, again, will trigger our Tri-brigade effects, and then bounce a face-up card our opponent controls. So, again, useful interruption, good arrows, easy to summon, activates our Tri-brigade effect. It does everything we want in this deck. One Nightmare Unicorn. Sometimes you just need to make a Nightmare Unicorn and get rid of a monster. This, you need to be careful making this because you are sometimes locked into Beast Warrior Winged Beasts, and obviously you can't make it from the graveyard, but sometimes you do need to make it. This is another card that could be cut if, say, you were running the Zeus package. One Hresvalga the Desperate Doom Eagle. This is sort of a DD Crow, not quite a DD Crow, because it returns it to the deck rather than the graveyard, but the main thing is it gets an extender out of your opponent's graveyard into the deck where it's harder for them to access. And again, it's a generic Link 3 with 2 downward pointing arrows, so it's very, very useful for us. Now we come to the most degenerate card in the deck, Simorgh, Bird of Sovereignty. Now again, this card, you can make it from your graveyard, or you can make it on the field with a card like Harpy Conductor. It's got 3 downward pointing arrows, which is insane. It can't be used as a link material, but that generally doesn't matter. It can't be targeted, or any winged beast monster that it points to with card effects, so it helps protect cards like Apex Avian or your Barrier Statue. And then, most importantly, during the end phase, so both end phases, yours and your opponent's, you get to special summon a winged beast monster from your deck or hand with a level equal to or lower than the number of unused spell and trap zones. So, going first, obviously, this pretty much guarantees you a Barrier Statue or an Apex Avian. Going second, maybe if you're against a very heavy back row deck, you won't be able to make Avian, but it can always bring out a Lyralusk or a Nerval, which is obviously, again, very useful for extending plays in future turns. We have one copy of Appaloosa because Nibiru is a card, and this deck really, really doesn't like Nibiru, and this deck doesn't put up lots of Omni Negates with cards like Borreload, Savage, and so on, so we need some way of making negates, and we often have lots of sort of spare link materials that we can easily make into a 2-material Appaloosa. We then run one Xyz, which is the Starling, Lyraluska Recital Starling. If it's Xyz summoned, you can target a face-up monster. That bit's irrelevant. The only thing you're doing with this card is using it to search a level 1 winged beast from your deck by detaching an Xyz material. That is its main use. And then finally, we run one copy of Sciframe Lord Omega, which we make with our Gamma package. Again, don't make this very often, but when you Gamma someone's Ash and you make this on turn 1, your opponent may just scoop there and then. So that's the deck. As I said, it's a little bit more expensive than most of the decks I post on this channel, but it is one of the best decks in the current metagame. For upgrades, the main upgrade would be including a Zeus package, which uses the Lyraluska Nightingale Xyz and Divine Arsenal AA Zeus, both of which, the Nightingale Xyz is very cheap, Divine Arsenal AA Zeus is not, but it is an incredible card, and if you can afford it, I would definitely recommend it. The other card that people are toying around with is Pot of Prosperity, but I feel like that's a given in just about every single deck, along with cards like Forbidden Droplets. Other options would be to look at the Jack in the Hand variant, which runs cards like Kinkabayo for more level 1 plays, which generally doesn't run Rescue Rabbit. but that card can be problematic if you're playing remote duels, which is why I went for the Rescue Rabbit variant over the Jack in the Hand variant. But I hope you enjoyed the deck profile, and I will see you again soon.